Hello, Supercoaches. Welcome to the AFL Supercoach Show, your in and out guide to the greatest game on earth, AFL Supercoach. We've got round 21 in the bag, round 22 to preview. Jaymz Clements is on leave again, so I'm your host, Al Paton, and joining me today, two of the brightest Supercoach minds on this little blue marble we call planet Earth. The Phantom is a late withdrawal, but we have the great Patch back with us again.
Hi, Al.
Right. And he's up and about, which is great to see. And welcoming back after a long break, Sean Manor-like, Tim Michell.
G'day, Al. I'd say it's good to be back, but yeah, looking at my score on the weekend, maybe not the best time to be back, but always happy to jump on and have a chat with you and Patch and chat a bit of Supercoach. But the league season's over, my ranking's taken a dive, but hopefully I can give some decent advice to the listeners out there.
Here's what not to do.
Yes, just do the opposite.
The Tim and Pat show, just like... Yeah.
Well, I think we do have some hot talking points coming up later. But we'll cover some trades for people who do have trades, but get into maybe a bit of what did go right and wrong this year, and maybe looking a little bit ahead to next year as well. So I'm sure I know you guys have been thinking a lot about that. Remember, this show is proudly brought to you by SuperCoach Plus. Follow your live scores on game day. If that is a good thing to do, plus break evens, projected scores, and lots more. Check out the show notes to subscribe. But as always, let's start with the wrap. Heroes and villains. Can we get this out of the way quickly? How did we go, Patch, in round 21?
We did not. We did not. 2-3-8-4 was fine, I guess, in a round where people would... Did someone crack 2,700 this week?
Yeah, a few did.
Yeah.
Was it really fine?
No, it was not fine. Hero was Nank and villain was me. Hi, I'm the villain. It's me.
I thought last week you targeted our guest as the villain, and I thought you might do it again with Tim back on.
The problem this week was emphatically me. Even though Tim has ruined my season, he hasn't ruined this week.
How many times have I been the villain now?
The limit does not exist.
Yeah.
But I thought I would outsmart the competition this week. I looked at everyone going Bont VC and went, well, what if he flops? What if Sam Flanders scores 140 and Bont scores 103? And he had 103 about 10 minutes into the second quarter. So that went badly. And then it went worsely when Harry Sheasel only scored 105, despite me baying for blood from the top deck of Marvel Stadium on Saturday. So... Yeah, it started badly and then didn't get any better. Charlie Curnow also, honourable mention to him spudding it up as well.
Yeah, Tim, off the back of that, how can you...
I was going to say Bont, but I'm worried Patch will attack me, and I think you might have Bont as potentially your hero, Al. So I've gone for Max Gawn. I still got him on my team. I held him through the couple of weeks where he was out with injury, and he's got a mattress on his leg at the moment. Who knows if he's going to get through the last 3 games. I really need him to, but he says he's going to battle for as long as he can with that injury that he's carrying. But to score 130 and probably played one of his best games of the year as well in a Melbourne team that's really battling in round 21. So I actually had the emergency on him because I was that unsure about how he was going to go and how much time he was going to get through. But he was intercept marking, smashed Tim English in the hit-outs, and I think Tim English probably got the better of him around the ground, but yeah, for Max Gawn to end up with 130 was absolutely massive for me, Al. So it was a really nice way to start the round with him going so well.
And what about a villain? Can you narrow it down?
Well, I have a villain, but you said I wasn't allowed to go with the villain. I've got Harry McKay sitting here with me, and I won't name any particular names or anything. I know that our friends at Champion Data have a pretty thankless role, but I was in a pretty bad frame of mind after the Carlton-Collingwood game because Mitch McGovern's shot landed in the car park that he had after the siren, and I thought, how can things get worse here? Then I woke up Sunday morning. I hadn't checked the scores after, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 minutes after the game. And I knew there was going to be some late scaling because the game was so close. And I thought, okay, well, Harry McKay scored 72. That's pretty bad, but it's not a complete disaster. And by the time I woke up on Sunday morning, he scored a 62. So whoever decided that Harry McKay was going to get scaled down 10 after the siren is my villain for this week.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Those close, and we had a few of them on the weekend. Obviously, things can go your way if you've got a player who really lifts in the final minutes, like a Tom Green or a Zach Merritt. But if you do something bad, obviously McGovern probably didn't go that well for him. But even just if you're not really doing anything, you get stuck on the bench or you're the wrong end of the ground, and you're not involved in those what about key plays.
Jordan Dawson really on the weekend? I think Phantom was tearing his hair. He went from about 105 to below 100. late in the game because Matthew Nicks left him on the bench for about 8 or 9 minutes in a close finish. Adelaide lost and Jordan Dawson's score plummeted. So, that just goes to show how crucial those close games can be.
A Matthew Nicks coaching blunder, you say? I'm shocked that the man that left
if there's anyone that knows about coaching blunders, it's both of us.
We are very good, but I don't think I'd leave Nick Murray on Jeremy Cameron for an entire game. But anyway, that's just me.
Or leave my best player on the bench.
Well, yeah, also that. A few little things, very high-level stuff, though, so...
So I guess I'm top of the pod this week. I wasn't that wrapped with my score, but 2-4-7-7, not terrible. And although I did lose 80 spots in the overall rankings, out to 617, slipped behind the Phantom. So I know I gave it to him a bit last week, but he can return the favour this weekend, which I think he has done already on the Phantom's Lair. If you listen to that, so
he did give you a clip on the way through.
Yes, I did pick that up.
I'm happy to swap Al if you want to take my 2-3-8-6.
So I don't want to be too annoyed about that. And up to about 5 o'clock on Saturday, I was absolutely flying. Had the VC on Bont, as you said. Bailey Day was really good in that game too. And then the North Melbourne Richmond game. Had mixed emotions there with the Tigers losing, but then you got the draft picks, and it was sort of hard to know how to feel about that. But then watching Tristan Cherry put up another 140, LDU 140 as well, who had an even McKercher turning up.
But the Nank.
Well, I don't want to say that I actually lost points on my Nank to Cherry trade, but both scoring over 140, you're not going to complain. So that was great. But then it all sort of, the wheels fell off on Saturday night. You mentioned Charlie Curnow, and really it was the forward line, which we've been complaining about all year, and I didn't get a single player over 100 up forward. Flanders missing out for the first time all year.
You're welcome,
Patch
everyone. Thank
aware.
you.
Isaac Heaney's fallen in a bit of a hole with the
what's
Swans.
going on there?
Dane Zorko a bit under. Even we thought he'd go massive against the Saints.
He was almost my villain. To only score 90 against St Kilda as a halfback seagull is not good enough.
But those scores actually look pretty good compared to the rest of the forward line. I had Luke Jackson, 48. I think he was on 49 at halftime.
Yep.
Finished on 48. Fairly highly owned, but just, very frustrating. I think you would say he's been a successful pick given he's probably ranked in the top 6 forwards, and he has been there for that sort of ruck cover. Not that I've really used it that much, but I don't know if I'd be wanting to go there again.
No. I think the whole idea, like mid-year, we're all in a position where we were like, we're going to push this guy to F7 by the later rounds. Like, I won't need him unless I actually absolutely need him, like if Sean Darcy's not there. But unfortunately, a lot of us have hit injuries or suspensions or whatever else that have completely thrown those plans out. And if you're like me, you've got Luke Jackson sitting about F4 at the moment. And F4 scoring 49 when other teams, as Patch said, are putting up 2,600, 2,700. That leaves you a fair way off the pace, unfortunately.
At this time of year when it's so competitive, most of my team was pretty good. It's really just those 3 forward spots that hurt me compared to, a Phantom who doesn't... I think he's got Jackson, but he doesn't have Curnow, and he's got Billy Dowling on the bench, whereas I'm having to play him on the field because Zach Fisher keeps not getting picked. Yeah. So,
and of course, everyone's like the most popular forward in the game. Mason Wood is also, came out with 38 on the weekend. So for his thousands and thousands of owners, that was also very painful.
But so that's what really hurt me.
As we said, my score was a disaster, Al. But you touch on a good point. I think the only really bad scores I had Ed Richards put up a 64, which could have been 120 if he'd kicked straight. I think he kicked 1 goal 3. Had Charlie Curnow, unfortunately, who was nowhere, and then a couple others, McKay and someone else and McKay and then Jackson. So that's 4 bad scores out of 22, which isn't ideal. But at this time of year, there's coaches putting up 21, 22 tons in their team. And if you have those dud scores, you're going to be miles off the pace. And that definitely showed there was a big gap between the best and the rest this week. Yeah,
absolutely. So getting into some SuperCoach news, and thankfully there's not a lot in terms of injuries, although sort of weirdly I wouldn't hate it if someone cropped up at some point and I can get an advantage with that trade that I'm still hanging on to. But
Al, we'll get onto that later. Tongue this goddamn minute.
But the injury seems to have dried up, so that's good. I mean, Charlie Curnow did spend some time on the bench in the last quarter, came back on. I mean, I don't know, he was no good anyway. I haven't really heard anything more about that.
He hurt that ankle in the warm-up about 5-6 weeks ago, and I know there's people saying that he just hasn't been right since. He hasn't been playing at 100%, but then I watched that game tearing my hair out, not just because Charlie Curnow's in my SuperCoach team, but because I love Carlton. And Michael Voss just let 2 or 3 Magpies jump over him all night. It was very frustrating to watch. So hopefully they come up with some other plan to get Charlie Curnow into the game, because you can't afford to have your best forward, but arguably your best player besides maybe Cripps this season, sitting there doing nothing for a whole game like he did. So I know Jesse Hogan went big against the Hawks on the weekend, so maybe with a Coleman medal to chase now, Charlie might bounce back this week. But like you say, Al, we just don't know how that ankle is going as well. Maybe that is affecting him more than we think.
Yeah, I think you'd be in a great position if you had, your 23rd, an extra sort of primo on the bench that you could loop with him would be the ideal situation.
Mason Wood.
Well,
extra 5 points.
Exactly.
Imagine if you could trade him to like Phillipou this week or something. I'd be very tempted.
Yeah, we'll get to trade talk in a second. Just stick to the run sheet. Well, because the only other news I wanted to put in was actually something you raised us, that we had a couple of subs on the weekend that were interesting. Charlie, Cameron and Libba, who not in many Supercoach teams, but it does flag, is this something that we might cop in the last few rounds that maybe, Grundy might not get rested, but maybe if
they
the
sub him
Swans
out
are
at
winning,
three-quarter
which seems unlikely at the moment, but sub him off at three-quarter time.
I think so. I was going through the fixtures. I think we're probably lucky that a lot of the teams that are out of finals contention now seem to play each other in the last few rounds. So, like you look at a game like round 24, Richmond against Gold Coast, I don't know, say Noah Anderson was in your team, for example. I don't think there's going to be any reason for Gold Coast to potentially sub him out at any point of that game. So you think you're pretty safe. There's only really 4 danger games, I reckon, in the last couple of rounds in particular. I think we're okay looking at this weekend's fixtures, but Geelong against St Kilda, so that was the option that Brisbane had on the weekend. They were so far ahead of the Saints. Did they want to rest Lockie Neal? Did they want to rest Josh Dunkley? They ended up going with Cameron in the end. The Cats also play West Coast in round 24, and we know half their team's about 45 years old. So would they, I don't know, look at someone who's had a fair workload like a Tom Stewart, who's in my team, so I hope it doesn't happen. But I don't know if Tom Stewart got any sort of niggle in round 24 and they're a fair way up against West Coast, do you take him off halfway through the third quarter? Bevo's already shown that he's willing to sub stars off. He did that with Libba on the weekend, and they play North in round 23. And then there's a Carlton West Coast game. I think Carlton will probably need to win and win well in that game. So I don't think any of the stars will get subbed out. But then again, at the same time, in round 23, the Blues might have that option if they're a fair way ahead against the Eagles.
So, not something we can really plan for, but just another wrinkle to keep us
you can't go into a
weekend.
Carlton West Coast game and trade out Sam Walsh because you're worried that he's going to be subbed off, for example. But just one of those things that you've got to cross your fingers and hope doesn't affect your round.
And the other big news that's broken today, which has kept us pretty busy in the Herald Sun office, is a couple of big retirements. I did look up, and 2,500 people do still have Dusty in Supercoach this year, so he's a must trade. But probably not so relevant this time around. But 2 obvious superstars in Dustin Martin and Tom Hawkins. I looked up some of their historic scores. Dusty's highest career high was a 184 in 2020. Was a great pick for us in a number of years, and always started the year well. He was a good one to whack the C or the VC on in that round 1 game against Carlton.
Every year. Every year without fail. And I never picked him because just to rub the pain in even more. But yes, he played very well against Carlton without fail.
And looking up these 3 grand finals, 137, 145 and 150 Supercoach points, we sort of back up the Norm Smith judges in those games.
I'm surprised in that 2021 he didn't score more than that.
2020, 145 he scored.
Yeah. Yep. It would have been one of those nice legacy ones, wouldn't it? If he was playing round 24 against Gold Coast and you had a trade left and you were going to... and you're a Richmond fan, for example, just to bring him in for one last game. I think back in 2020, Gary Ablett finished up. I traded him in round 18, the last round that year, the COVID year. And he scored a ton on the way out. And it was just like a nice way to be like, farewell, Gaz, thanks for all the many, many Supercoach points that you've given us over the years. But unfortunately, we won't get that with Dusty. But at least there will be a farewell, Al, which I imagine you'll be there for in 24.
I'll have to clear the diary to make sure I'm there for that one. And Tomahawk was amazing for a key forward. He just always found a way to be in the top 6 forwards for probably a decade.
Every year we just sort of go, we'll get him halfway through the year, and then it never happened. And then you get to the end of the year and go, why did I not pick him? Like he had that spot where he was cheap, and he was fantastic as a Supercoach prospect.
Yeah. You remember the year you got him before he played Essendon?
Yes, and he scored 184.
I think he was on about 110 at half time. And Brandon Zerk-Thatcher was just nowhere.
And he did have 200 in his catalogue, a 204 in round 12, 2020, kick 6 against Port Adelaide.
From 6?
Yeah.
6.
So
I think my only Tomahawk memory was that painful one. I think I benched him one year, and it was against Port Adelaide, and he scored 2 goals in about the last 5 minutes. And now I'm like, okay, he's sitting on the bench, he's about 60, and then he ended up about 130 because he scored all those points late in the game, and just kicking myself.
So a couple of legends gone, moving into a new era of Supercoach, and certainly for Richmond fans next year. But getting into our talking points for the week, and number 1 is some trade talk for people lucky enough to have a trade. So I'm hanging on to one. Not sure what I'm going to do with it. Up until now, the calculation has been I don't want to use it because if a big name goes down like a Dacos or a Bont and there's 3 or 4 rounds to go, I'm going to lose so many points. I want to save the trade to get me out of that hole. But now we're close enough to the end that I think you probably roll the dice. And if, Bond goes down, you just cover him with Billy Dowling for 2 weeks and hopefully you get more points by trading in an extra primo or someone this week. So for people like me or others out there who have a trade, what would we do? And we touched on Charlie Curnow already, but are there popular players who are in a bit of a hole that you could trade out to try and get a bit of an edge? Maybe, someone who is owned by a lot of teams and you think I'm going to go in a different direction and try and get an advantage by just, pulling the trigger and rolling the dice with 3 rounds to go.
Yeah, well, it depends what you're playing for, Patch, doesn't it? Like if you're going for overall rankings, you just try and get the best possible player in, one of the stars that is just on a heater at the moment, like a Lockie Whitfield or someone that's going really well and their form doesn't look like slowing up. But if you're playing for league, you've probably got to look at the matchup that you're coming up against. Do you want a unique player? Or if you're in a position where the SuperCoach Plus projections have you already in front, maybe it's worth trading in someone to cancel out one of those good players from your opponent that you don't have, because then it just mitigates the danger of, let's say you don't have Marcus Bontempelli and your opponent does, you trade in the Bont this week because then you effectively just cancel him out. You know that if he goes 160, it's not going to hurt you in your league matchup.
Yeah, 100%. And Patch, of these names, I made a little list here. Curnow has a 5-round average of 76. Isaac,
is it that high?
Yeah,
yeah.
It surprised me.
Okay.
Well, he's had 2 scores of 33 in that time, but a couple of tons as well, such as
remember when Carlton had an easy draw?
Yeah, and we're all just when we picked him.
Yeah.
I mean, Isaac Heaney, 3-round average of 76. I mean, could you do something crazy and take him out? What about, you mentioned Luke Jackson as well, 3-round of 72. You can probably live without the ruck cover for a couple of weeks.
The problem with trading out the forwards is where are you going?
Yeah.
Who are you trading him to? Like, Ben Keys was on a hot run of form, and that's not a thing I'm going to trust. There's just no one, unless you got multiple trades and you go down to the poo in Mateus Philippou and then go up somewhere else. That'd be about the only way you could justify making a move in the forward line, as much as maybe there are a few other options around to go like sideways and try and jag someone on a really good run home. But especially with someone like Heaney, he's still got the potential to go big. The Swans need to get the fire back in the belly.
Yep. So
Jackson, yes. Curnow, yes. Heaney, I don't think you would. You've just really got to do the equation of, if you're trading Heaney to Philippou, Heaney could average 75 and Philippou could average 74.
When you go back to round 1, Heaney scored 144 against Collingwood, who they play this week. I know it's a completely different kettle of fish because the Swans started so hot and they're looking terrible at the moment. What were they, about 150 to 0 down at one stage against Port Adelaide? But yeah, I'd be loath to trade Isaac Heaney out this week knowing how well he played against Collingwood. Like, that was the game that really sort of announced him, wasn't it, as a SuperCoach must-have. If you didn't get on in round 0, we all jumped on pretty early. So tend to agree with Patch. Luke Jackson's one I think you can part with pretty easily. I wouldn't be all that stressed about trading him, and Curnow as well.
If you've got the Krug as well, Krug is apparently back this week.
Oh, really?
Well, if you're going to sideways, I think Jeremy Cameron's the one, isn't he? With Geelong's run home. They still play St Kilda. They still play West Coast at home. I know, as we talked about, there's that risk that maybe a star gets managed at some point, and he's sort of that older, sort of 31, maybe 32, that they wouldn't want to take that risk with. But he showed on the weekend like he looked back to his best. And if he gets going against either of those teams, could be a massive score coming in a prelim or grand final week.
Have Jeremy Cameron and Charlie Curnow?
Well, ideally you loop them, don't you?
Yeah.
And you take a big score. But there's also that risk that Cameron and Curnow, because Carlton plays West Coast as well, and Charlie Curnow feasted on West Coast, I think 19 goals in 2 games against West Coast last year. So you'd hate to bench Curnow on the 1 week after copping all these 30s that he does go well. But yeah, I think Cameron stands out as the pod. The other move you could make, Al, quickly is maybe sideways in one of your rookies, like Max mentioned, Nathan Kruger. Do you go him to Philippou while Philippou's still within reach? And then at least you've got handy F7 cover. So if Philippou scores 90 like he did on the weekend, you can bench Charlie Curnow and you don't have to worry about him going 30.
So we're still 331k Philippou. So this sort of, I don't want to just delve into talking purely about my team, but the situation I'm in is that I've got 1 trade left. I've got 160 grand in the bank and I've still got Zach Fisher sitting on the bench. I could trade Fisher to, like, with that money, anyone, But the problem is I need a forward, and there's probably Caldwell is the one that I don't have. And I've sort of been thinking, well, he's not killing me getting 100s, 110s, but then compared to what Billy Dowling's scoring, that is killing me. So do I just swap him and then Dowling goes back onto the bench as cover? Or do you trade Dowling, keep Fisher, hoping he comes back at some stage on the bench, and then I could trade Dowling to say Philippou.
What did Jaden Stevenson do on the weekend? Had 20,
he scored 100.
25, scored 100. I don't think Fisher's coming back anytime soon.
Stevenson did play a Zach Fisher game where he kicked out in the full a bunch of times. He didn't look very good from a footballing sense. It was a Zach Fisher style game. It's like, oh, how has he scored 110 points? He looked quite, out of place at points. So, I mean, what Clarko should do is play like a Riley Hardiman from like a football perspective, not from a Supercoach perspective, and just get games.
I want Hardiman cheap next year. I hope he doesn't come back. Sorry, Riley.
I think that's I don't think he's coming back, and I don't think he should come back.
I was playing around with my son's team, and we were working out his trades last week. We almost traded in Stevenson, but I couldn't do it. So we ended up going with James Peatling. We actually worked out okay.
We would have called
Dogs Boys.
We would have called Child Support Services if we'd done that.
Well, he outscored me by about 100, so that's how well I'm going.
Maybe we should call Adult Support Services for you.
Seriously.
Just before we move on that quickly, I could afford Jeremy Cameron from Dowling. I could afford Philippou. The other one that the Phantom mentioned on the lair now, is this a realistic possibility, or is he trolling me to finish above me in the overall ranks? Jamara Ugle-Hagan, 426K. Last 4 games, 122, 89, 95, 108, and the Dogs finished with Adelaide, North and the Giants.
Phantom is so obsessed with Jamara Ugle-Hagan. I reckon he's brought him up about 4 times in the last week. So I didn't realise how well he'd been scoring. Yeah. And he should have scored 150 the other night. He kicked 2 6 and at least 5 of those 6 were gettable. So, and I think he kicked one out in the full too. So he could have scored absolutely massive on the weekend. Yeah, he could be a huge point of difference, couldn't he? I don't know exactly what. I think the Dogs have got one easy game. Yeah, we said
Adelaide,
they got North. They got North coming up.
Giants in the grand finals not too easy.
No Griffin Logue, who got injured on the weekend. So North's backline takes a bit of a hit there. So that'd be a huge pod for the last few weeks.
Another key forward. And
I know Phantom's really hot. We're going to do some 2025 talk, and we've got a couple of articles going up pretty soon pointing to some 2025 stuff. And he's a name that the Phantom really likes for next year.
Well, that is the next topic on the agenda, which is looking forward to 2025. Actually, I think I had originally on here lessons from this year, but I've somehow left that off. Is there anything we can mention?
What do we say? Don't do what's in the past. Do the opposite of these two.
I mean, I think one thing that's come out this year is that it's always hard because early in the season there were a bunch of players who were just so hot that you just felt you just have to get them, otherwise you're falling behind.
Yeah.
But people who paid all this money for Luke Ryan or for Caleb Sarong even in the middle of the year.
Tom Green for a 5 and then
it hasn't really been worth it, has it? Like
Matt Rowell, shout out to my boy.
Yes, paying over $600K for him.
Yeah. Well, the reason that the Phantom has done so well and got up to the sort of the top of the News Corp rankings is because he just chased value. And I know that the same strategy isn't going to work year to year, and that's the sort of like the beautiful thing about SuperCoach Al, that you can do really well one year going a certain way, maybe like burning all your trades early on and going really hard and chasing cash and all that. But sort of the tried and true, and it has worked this year, is that like when a guy bottoms out and when a guy gets to the lowest point of their value, that's the time to jump on. So I've been thinking back on sort of the way that I attack things, and I was so desperate to avoid the forward line just because it was such a dumpster fire this year that I thought, no, I'll load up in other positions and I'll try and get my defence sorted and my midfield sorted. But I played myself out of being able to get Bailey Dale at 420K or whatever it was because my defence was full by that point. And there's been good midfield bargains come up. Like I couldn't get Jordan Dawson at 550K because my midfield was just about done by that point. And then a few weeks later, I'm sideways trading someone to Dawson for 620K. So that's probably the biggest thing that I'll take from this year. Just the importance of chasing value has been emphasised, and I know it won't work every year, but certainly that's been the biggest thing for me this year. And maybe just not putting like so much emphasis on the buys. Like I did some huge trades through the buys. I punted Whitfield, and we all know how well he's gone since the buys because I wanted to potentially make a move and get up the ranks in round 12. Didn't quite work out, and it's ended up hurting me in there not having Whitfield through the hottest streak of his career in SuperCoach. Round 15, I sensed an opportunity again, and I used 3 trades, and that was the round I got in Curnow, McKay and Sard because Carlton had this amazing draw on the run home, and really Sard's about the only one of those 3 that's done okay for my team. So if I have to fly with 17 or 18 in the buys, maybe that's something that I'll look at next year. And because you can make just as much ground at this time of the year, if not more, than you do throughout the buys. Like, yeah, you might cop a 50-point hit in the buys, but we're seeing teams scoring 2,700, 2,650, and they're going up 400 or 500 spots a week at the moment, while I'm going that way at a rate of knots going backwards.
Would you manage 40 trades differently next year?
Yes, I would ask for 45. I wouldn't.
I just need 41. I just need that one extra right now.
I think there's, a good case to be made for restraint with those trades. I was one of those ones that looked very eagerly at 40 and went, I can go harder, I don't have to think about it, and then got to the buy and went, I should have thought about that. And, there was the temptation to sideways trade, which I avoided for so long. And I was like, no, I'm not sidewaysing, I'm just upgrading. And then I got to the point where I'm like, oh, but I need that player, which, was a Matt Rowell was the one that I really chased hard when I should have gone for someone else. Should have gone for a Bailey Dale or a cheaper option. So what Tim said about value is bang on, which I knew for the first half of the year, but then just kind of just held pace rankings wise and just really wanted to do something to jump up. And I think if I just kept doing what I was doing and stuck to the plan, then it would have gone far better in the back end of the year. And then also restraint, not spending 5 trades on Colby McKercher would have been a good idea. Not trading out Harry Sheasel, hypothetically. You wouldn't hypothetically do that. Even as like I'll jump in form, I'm going to have the point of difference as he adapts to the midfield role, and then I'll get him back when he's good again. I should have just kept him. But I think also I needed a few more pods where I got a lot of the guys were scoring very well. Everyone jumped on them because they had a lot of trades. Yeah. And, everyone seemed to have a lot of cash to burn as well. So we've all ended up with very similar teams. And now, as Tim said, the teams with a few pods, the teams that have waited a bit longer to upgrade and really pick their targets properly are soaring past me, and I'm in free fall.
I think probably trusting like my research as well a bit, Al. Like I didn't pick Jack Steele at the start of the year because I think sort of history told us that maybe due to his kicking efficiency and a few body niggles and stuff, that maybe he was that guy that at best would average sort of 110, 120. And then I watched him average 130 through the first 5 weeks. And like Patch said, just kept getting that itch that I was like, if I don't get this guy into my team now, he's just going to blow me out of the water, and I won't be able to catch all these teams that are going so well with Jack Steele. And lo and behold, paid top dollar for him I don't think he's got close to the sort of 620, 625 that I paid for him for the rest of the season. He averaged about 95. And then as soon as I traded him out, he started playing. And then as soon as I traded him out, he started playing well again, which is quite often the way. But
I think that is the key lesson: is avoid all of Tim Mitchell's players. Just don't if he's trading them in, you trade them out. Like just don't live with that ride.
Well, there are people that like quite smartly avoid my captain picks and stuff as well, Patch. But no, like not me. Paying $620 for Jack Steele and $625 for Jordan Dawson. Like if I could take those back again, like they're 2 moves that ruined my season essentially. Because if I'd gone any other way, if I'd chased a bit of value, or if I'd been more patient, I think I'd probably be in the top 1,000 instead of going further and further back in the rankings like I have the last couple of weeks.
And I mean, early in the year, it's so hard to watch players that you don't have consistently putting up these massive scores, but this year has shown it again that it's really hard to average 120 plus 130 for a whole year, even though it looked like Sarong and Ryan and Heaney and all these guys and Steele were going to do it. Really, none of them have in the end. So, I'd have to look up the exact numbers, how many players are averaging over 120, but there's not many. So, sometimes you have to ride it out.
But how can you... it's hard to tell yourself when you're sitting 15, 20K overall and you're watching Jack Steele score 130 every week. No, I've just got to hold... because I know that Jack Steele over 150, 200 games has never done this, and the likelihood is that he's not going to be able to sustain it. And the more you watch it, like 5 weeks of, as you know, Al, from blowing up our group chat for those first 5 weeks of the season, eventually I broke and had to get him in, which, I don't know, maybe I've learned a good lesson this year that I need to just back myself in a little bit more and trust that history will be on my side, and this sort of scoring from players that historically haven't scored that well is probably unsustainable at that stage of the career. Yes, there's breakouts that are going to happen, but if a guy's averaged 115 max over an 8 to 10 year career, that's probably going to be about their ceiling.
So looking ahead to next year, Patch, I know you've been doing some research, crunching some numbers on who we might be thinking about picking in our starting teams, which will come around sooner than we think, the team picker in December.
It will. Merry Christmas.
Can you give us a little sneak peek? What sort of a couple of names on that list?
Yes, I can.
Levi?
Well, he's off winning Olympic gold at the moment, Big Levi. So
The shot put.
Yeah, the shot put, gymnastics, the synchronized swimming.
He's a versatile athlete.
Yeah, he's so good. So Matthias Philippou was one I was very keen on looking at, and then we were devastated to hear that he was out for the season with injury, and now he's back in POG form. So he's one we'll be looking at very closely at. Colby McKercher as well is one who could do a Harry Sheasel next season, and really kind of perk up. And there are a few other guys that I'm kind of trying to keep an eye on and just see what they're up to, like a James Peatling, for both if he leaves, he's out of contract, and go somewhere that gives him more midfield time, and also if Harry Perryman leaves the Giants, then he might take his role. So he's someone that I'm very interested in, kind of up forward. Phantom's mentioned Jamara and been all over him, so I certainly can't take credit on that front. But a few other guys that are kind of coming through, like a Riley Tilthorpe, and a few others of that ilk.
What about Tim players who might get the old 30% discount and
we love
get them
these,
super cheap?
Yeah, I think, well, the three that stand out, I'm a bit 50-50 on the one that I love most of these three, but Bailey Smith's probably going to be around somewhere in that 315, 320k mark. Ooh. He was going to be a forward mid this year as well. I assume he's probably going to keep DPP, which is massive, and probably slot straight into Geelong's midfield. That's where it sounds like he's going. So you'd think with Geelong regenerating a bit, I know that Danger, there's talk he's going to sign for another couple of years, but at the same time, as he sort of heads towards 36, 37, maybe he plays a bit more forward or something and allows Bailey Smith to go in. Really the only thing, well, apart from his kicking, which is a bit suspect sometimes, that has held Bailey Smith back from sort of taking that step from being an okay midfielder in SuperCoach, and I think his career best is about 98.5, to sort of elevating into that 105, 110 range has been the role that Luke Beveridge has had him in, playing more outside and even playing a bit of half forward as well. So if he plays inside mid, and I think there's going to be a dearth of good forward options next year anyway. Like, I think we're all going to pick him. Kadeen Coleman's the other one. We're all going to pay 390k, I think it was, for him this year. So I don't see any reason to not pay less than 300k for him at the start of next year. Hopefully his recovery from his ACL that he did in round 0 has all gone well. And although it sounds like the Zork Gull, Dane Zorko, is going to go round again, I think Kadeen Coleman will still go quite well in that defence for Brisbane. And then Sam Doherty was the other one I referred to as well. He was only going to be mid-only this year, which I think a lot of people forget, which might make him a little bit harder to pick. But if he's going to be a 400k or below, maybe he'll be that Hopper type from last year, for example, that we use as a stepping stone to one of those absolute rolled gold primos and can still score well from the start of the year.
Yeah, I'll be watching the Tigers very closely. Obviously, I think they'll be very SuperCoach relevant next year. They'll have about 8 first-round draft picks by the sound of it, so plenty of rookies will be getting games, you would think.
Just nanking the kids.
Yeah, exactly. And then hopefully Josh Gibcus will come back.
Yeah, he's one I had on my list,
another super unlucky injury this year. If he gets through that and recovers, I think he's been 170, 180k in his rookie years when we picked him so far, and next year with a discount he might actually be closer to...
I think he'd be 120.
Yeah, so I think he'll definitely be on the list.
Does that mean Zach Reed gets to like 98k?
Yeah, the old 86k rookie days. And the other Tiger, I mean, could you do... I've talked about key forwards and how I don't like them at all, but if Tom Lynch was 210k to start the year, he's barely played in 2 years. I mean, his body obviously... severe issues, but we didn't think Elliot Yeo would get through 18 games this year.
What about Elliot Yeo paying 20 games and Orazio playing about 15? Who could have predicted either of those things would happen? So who knows? He was on my... You tasked me with a bit of a 2025 watch list a couple of weeks, Al, and Tom Lynch is one of the names I've got on there. So you only need him to go well for about 4 or 5 weeks and make 150k and then flip him to someone else. So you don't need his body to stay right for 20 games.
Yeah, preferably more than 2. But the nicest thing I can say about Tom Lynch is that he'll be that top-end rookie price. And when he gets injured in round 2, you can trade him to any rookie in the game.
Yeah, that's right, the one you miss.
He's like the holding guy, and then you get a bit of cash, hopefully, when you trade Lynch to whoever that rookie is.
And Tim, you touched on DPP, so we've got some numbers from Champion Data. Keep an eye out for this on Code Sports and across all the SuperCoach platforms in the next couple of days with a full list. I think there's about 25 players on there, but any that jump out to you, I saw, we'll give a little couple of teasers away. Harry Sheasel currently sitting on 41% defence, 34% mid, so he's right on the borderline of, hopefully if he keeps playing in the midfield, that'll sort of nudge up a tiny bit and he'll be a def mid to start next year.
Yeah, so Tom Stewart, who's been great since I got him in probably about a month ago to my team as well. We all know he's been pretty much starting as a centre bounce midfielder and then floating back. So the key is starting as a midfielder, which is why his percentage is so high now. So he's up to, I think, 30% L. So if Geelong continues to play him in the same role for the next 3 games, he should just get there to be a def mid, which... What would Tom Stewart been? 31, 32, after being a defender for close to a decade in SuperCoach to then suddenly get mid is a bit bizarre. I don't know if we've seen that happen before, but it would just add to the allure, I think, of picking Tom Stewart and having that flexibility to swing in between the two lines at the start of next year. Plenty of other good names. Luke Jackson's one that I'm watching pretty closely as well, Al, because I'm interested. Like, he's been solid, and like you look at his numbers and he really hasn't had that many games apart from when Sean Darcy wasn't playing where you think, like, I'm really happy to have Luke Jackson in my team. But then I think for overall points, he's like 4th or 5th in the forward line. So if he keeps forward...
And forward is going to be really hard again next year.
I thought his percentage of forward time would be a lot higher than it is. Like, he's probably around that 60% mark in the ruck, maybe even a little bit higher. So that's another one that's going to go right down to the wire as well for DPP next year, because... I don't really want to pick him because he hasn't been sort of the most enjoyable pick, and you notice the down weeks more than the good ones with Luke Jackson. But at the same time, I think we're going to be so stuck for forward options next year, and he provides that ruck insurance that if he holds on to DPP, we'll probably go there again. Yeah,
I think the takeout from me, scanning through some of the numbers, was that, forwards are going to be really hard again, and defence is just going to be absolutely stacked. We'll probably, Dacos he'll be a mid only, but then, Zorko will go back to defence, whether you'd pick him at, 36, but Flanders might be a def mid.
Def mid, yeah.
Nick Martin will be def only. There'll be, a bunch of these extra names going in there as well, and we've seen how well the defenders have gone this year when you've got your Luke Ryans and, especially if Sheasel keeps his defence status as well.
So just pick 6 defenders to start. 6
just load up primo defenders, exactly.
Yeah, good thing they've all got mid-eligibility because you'll have 8 defenders in your midfield and then 6 defenders in your
14 defenders to start, Patch.
Yeah. I like it. Now, we were going to have the Phantom on here, but he is out a late withdrawal. So we are jumping straight into a new segment, which is called Running Hot. Who are the most informed players in SuperCoach right now? The best 3-round averages in the game. We're going to count up from 3 to 1, and I'll start with the great man. The Bont jumped into the top 3 with a massive 182 on the weekend. Number 1 scoring player in SuperCoach for 2024. He was the number 1 scoring player last year, and I think I'm just going to pay however much he costs in 2025.
Lockie Whitfield's number 2, absolutely pigging out since the buys, taking about 7 kick-ins a game, averaging about 25 uncontested possessions, and no opposition players seem to want to go near him. So, with a nice finish to the season, it looks like Lockie Whitfield could be another great one to trade in form this week.
And top of the tree, number 1 for the 3-round average this week is the Bulldogs' number 1, Adam Treloar, who is averaging 147.7 over the last 3 weeks. If you don't mind, the one that slipped away from most of us, if you got on him, well done, you're a genius. For the rest of us, we just kind of sit there and reminisce about what could have been if we'd traded in Adam Treloar and been willing to risk it on those dodgy hammies.
Yeah, another player who, injuries probably scared us off, and
Bevo scared us off.
Well, yes.
It's just one of those. How can you think a guy's going to play arguably his best year of footy at 32 years of age or something? Like, I know he's a very good player at Collingwood and a good player at GWS even early days as well, but he's been amazing this year. I'd be surprised if he's not Australian.
Yeah, no, it should be.
It'd be a shame if he's not all Australian at this rate.
Yep. Another new little segment we'll introduce over the next few weeks is just keeping an eye on the overall leaderboard, the chase for the 50K. Obviously, things are really heating up there, and if you're in the sort of top 5, top 10 in the overall rankings, you would be watching this extremely closely. But number 1, we currently have Cadiz Crew Nathan, scored 2-6-1-3. Had a quick look at his team. He's got Cherry and Gawn as his ruck combo, which is pretty handy. But hopefully, as you say, Gawn keeps...
Hope he's got a trade. I'm not confident Max Gawn's going to play out the season.
He does still have Zach Fisher on the bench, so that made me feel a little bit better. But if he comes back, he might give him a bit of a boost.
He's got Mason Wood on the bench as well, asking for just a friend.
I'll have to check up
Mason
on that.
Wood's owned by one person.
If only
you
wasn't.
and Mason's mum.
Yeah. He's got a 50, so Nathan's got a 57-point lead currently on the second place team, Joven. His team is called Caleb Windsor Not,
That's
which we
not
like.
much. If Caleb Windsor Not won, like I'm not going to barrack for anyone. We have to be impartial, but that is a great name to potentially win Supercoach.
And our mate Nat, who came in on the pod about a month ago, Chev has dropped to 5th. So still in contention, but he's 205 behind number 1. So you think that it'd be hard to come from outside that.
You need
3 rounds
to
to go.
hit a couple of good captains from that far back, you'd think.
Yep, absolutely. So quickfire round is going to be extremely quickfire this week. We've just got one question. Tim, how worried are you this week about Ben Keys tagging Marcus Bontempelli?
Is that a serious question?
We did it a few years ago.
I think he tried to tag him in 2020. I'm going to go back to, and it was one of the worst tags I've ever seen in history, Al. So I was anti-potting the Bont at that point, and I'm pretty sure he's got about 210 points. And Ben Keys, at one stage, the tag, Ben Keys was about 60 metres away from Bont. So if that happens this week, I will put the captaincy on Bont without a doubt.
The other one, actually, maybe Patch, I'd ask you, if you were a Lockie Neal owner, how worried would you be about Toby Bedford lining up on him this week?
No, a little bit. I maybe wouldn't captain him, but otherwise I'm not trading Lockie Neal out because that would
Got a
be
3-round average of 99.
better
Since I
than
paid
most of the
about
players that I
700K for
have. Like
This
it's
just goes
annoying
back
that
to-
you've coughed up.
We have.
but
I can't remember one time that any of us have paid more than 600K for a player and it's worked out. So
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Matt Rao was going to Darwin when you bought him at
Yep.
about 600K, and you're like,
Yeah, 630.
this
I
is
think I
like a
paid.
pig in mud. Like this guy has to score well in Darwin, and ever since then his season's just nosedived. So
I did pay 600K.
it just doesn't work.
I did pay 600K for the Bond, and that's about the only player.
But the
that-
Bond
Yeah,
doesn't
that's-
get. He doesn't
he's the
get below
Yeah,
600K.
exactly.
Yeah,
So-
I think,
Exactly.
I'll give credit to someone else, I can't remember who pointed this out, but Bont is the only player in Supercoach who hasn't dropped below 600K all year. So, yeah, he's
he
the
did start
exception to
about
the rule.
900K. So.
Yeah. I saw in the most traded in players this week, he's on the list. He's about number 8. So there's like 200 people or something who've managed to not have him all year, and they finally
Imagine holding
broken.
out that long. Wow.
Talking of the Bont, captains for this week. So the Bulldogs play in the last game of the round against the Crows. So you think he has to be the safest of safe fallback captain options. But who do we like maybe as a VC?
You pointed out a good issue, well, not a good issue, but an issue that a lot of us will have, Al, in that a lot of the popular loophole options play pretty early in the round. So I don't think we'll necessarily have the option of doing what lots of us would like to, which is probably Zach Butters. I think they might play Saturday night or late on Saturday anyway against Melbourne, and the D's just gave up 180-odd points to Marcus Bontempelli, and Butters also scored really well against them last time. So that would be a nice VC into Bont, but we might have to look a bit earlier in the round, won't we, potentially, and take a bit of a risk with the VC, knowing that we've got these great fallback options in Butters and Bont later on.
Yeah, Cohen Livingston playing 1:45 on Saturday afternoon against North Melbourne at Blundstone Arena.
Yeah.
Well, I think he'll be playing waffle, but he'll be locked out at 1:45, which means we have, before that, if he's your only loop, you have Sydney against Collingwood at the SCG.
So Dacos is going to get tagged.
Yeah.
You'd think. So you can't go
James Jordan.
Dacos. I do, because I don't know how many people will go there, but Heaney after a 144 against Sydney last year, I know he's not in the greatest form, but the Swans have got to turn a corner at some point. Like, they're not as bad as they showed against Port Adelaide.
What about Errol?
Heaney, if I was going early, Errol's been in very good form as well. You could potentially go there, but I don't know. I've just got this feeling about Heaney this week. Grundy only scored about 70 last time he played against the Pies, so I probably wouldn't go with him despite the SCG
He was
record.
playing at the MCG. So
And he
he's
averages
back
about 30 outside the SCG, doesn't he?
and he's averaging 216 at the SCG. So he's my VC pick.
Yeah.
Brody Grundy, lock it in. Don't yell at me.
Well,
if
North
it
West
goes
Coast is the
bad.
other game.
Yeah,
isn't
I mean,
it,
that's the
Al?
thing. So a couple of other potential loopholes, like if you've got a Kynan Brown, Melbourne plays Saturday night, Zach Reid, Essendon also Saturday night. So there's a couple of others floating around. Will Dawson, but he doesn't really help you playing early on the Saturday.
Surely
but yeah,
we
if you
can
can
get
get
Billy-
to that North West Coast game.
Can we get Billy Dowling managed for 1 week?
Oh, gee, no,
Phantom
please no.
would drive to Melbourne and kick you in the shins.
He's had 6 weeks as a first-year player. Well, he's about third year, isn't he? But he'd be a handy loophole late in the round.
But yeah, North West Coast, if you can do that, I mean, Sheezel would be obviously a pretty handy pick there. LDU against the Eagles midfield off at 141, and Tristan Cherry would be my number 1 pick coming up against Bailey Williams. Jared Witt scored 161 against West Coast last week. They're giving out the most points, I think, in the ruck in the comp. So
How did Tristan Cherry turn out to be the best Supercoach pick of the year? That is just insane.
is he R1 next year? There's a
407K
Quickfire
was,
question.
and I think if he was 350, we just about all would have picked him. But that extra 50K made such a difference. And like, congratulations if you picked him and stuck with him, because a lot of people got to the mid-year point of the season and thought he'll tire.
Yeah, now
first year ruckman, never really carried the ruck. And now there's people.
There's sexy Jordan Sweet just lying there.
Yeah. He's going better than Gawn. He's going better than Grundy. Nang's probably matching him most weeks, isn't he, or going pretty close to? But yeah, no one has been as good as Tristan Cherry for value this year, I don't think.
Yep, and next year we'll
and next
get
year
into this
will
over
be
the
the
summer.
year of him and TDK, I think.
Yeah,
Ooh.
geez, could he risk his body?
To Conning.
Well, that's why you pick
Gawn
Jackson.
is, I mean, how will Gawn be? So yeah.
Anyway, we'll all be picking Cherry, won't we?
Yeah,
Paying about
interesting.
$700K for him, which is crazy.
Yeah, insane. So we finish off with what was Tuesday trades at the start of the year, then we went to Monday moves. Now it's back to Tuesday trades, but no one really has trades except for me. So if you had a trade,
Tim, should we just go to the pub while Al just talks through this? Like, we'll just...
Al said, I took this as like if you had an option to do anything in SuperCoach.
Yeah.
Which is delete team. Is that an option? Is that something I can do? No. My whole team's pretty much
what about
gone
Harry?
backwards.
He's still got trades, hasn't he?
I'd like to dump them all. Yeah, my son does still have trades. He's got
what's he
two,
doing?
which he keeps reminding me of too. He loves mentioning the fact he's still got two. So
We need to know Harry's trade tips for the
he
week.
traded in Hayden Young on the weekend, which worked incredibly well, and he traded in James Peatley. And he picks. I think everyone would think that I'd do his trades for him. But no,
I don't know. He scored pretty well.
His team's going, well, that's the thing. His team's going a lot better than mine. So, and he did say to me a couple of weeks ago, which I mentioned to you, my team's really good, but they just don't score well. Which, like, I was like,
that means your team's bad.
I felt like he.
No, that's getting it.
That was like he is indoctrinated into SuperCoach now. That he thinks his team is amazing, but they just don't score well.
What was his projected
Which I reckon I say most weeks to myself.
That is learned behaviour.
I was very proud of him when he said that. Like, even though as much pain as he wins,
So
I
is Harry
think if I had a
looking at,
move,
this week?
if I could do anything this week, I don't care who I trade. I would just get Whitfield back because watching him run around and have 30 uncontested every week is just one of the most painful things ever. When you add him in your team, I can cop Hayden Young because he has contested possessions and he lays tackles, but watching a guy run around and seagull his way to 40 possessions just about every week like Lockie Whitfield is one of the more painful things in SuperCoach, knowing that 8 weeks ago he was in your team scoring 95 every week.
And the Giants have Freo this week, then Brisbane, then the Dogs. I mean,
I don't think anyone's going to tag him. In the next, Riley West might pay him some attention in that Dogs game, but even that's wishful as a non-owner. I think he's going to just have 35 plus the next 3 weeks.
yeah, unfortunately, I can't really get a defender. Like, there's some midfielders I'd like. I could probably afford a Treloar or somebody, but I don't have any midfield forward DPPs in the right spots to do it. So I can, if I trade Fisher, but it just comes down to, that question of do I go Fisher to, it's probably Caldwell, best forward available for.
I'd do that.
And finish the year with 100K in the bank. Or trade Dowling to, say, a Philippou and then, play him and if Fisher's not there, or maybe loop them if he is.
Yeah. Is Dowling to Philippou that much of an upgrade, really? Like, Dowling until the weekend was pretty good. He was scoring 70s most weeks.
Or just, go absolutely
Unless you want to keep
left field
440K on your bench for, in vain hope that he comes back, which he won't.
Yeah.
I just don't think Fisher's coming back.
Well, I mean, if he's not picked, that probably makes the decision for me.
Yeah, he's gone to live on a halfback flank on a farm somewhere.
the VFL farm? Or?
Yeah, the VFL farm. He's
where did he play? What was the Sydney ground, Al, that I'd never heard of that he played at the other
Showground?
week?
No,
not the showgrounds. It's the one across the road.
Yeah.
The one across the road from the Swans ground.
Yes.
If anyone knows that, leave a comment below.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll leave it on that, but you've got a few more days to make a decision. But I think I will roll with 0 trades for the last 2 weeks. Everyone else is doing it, and I'm missing out on the fun. Remember, everyone, to subscribe to SuperCoach Plus to take your game to the next level. Follow Code Sports for the latest SuperCoach news and analysis. Leave a rating or a review on Apple or Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube to get a notification whenever latest episodes drop. Follow all the latest SuperCoach AFL social accounts for your SuperCoach finals action and reaction during the week and across the weekend. Thank you, Patch, for joining us. There's only a few of these to go.
Thank you, Al, for dragging me once again down to the chamber of pain.
And thanks, Tim, for jumping on.
Thanks for putting the podcast back on a Tuesday, Al. I don't work Mondays, which is why you haven't seen much of me, but Jaymz Clements been doing a terrific job. So nice to be able to fill in for Jaymz this week.
I think Jaymz is back next week, so we'll be back to the regular cast for the last couple of weeks.
Back to someone that can actually grow a beard. I don't think I could grow that beard if I tried it for 2 years.
I've been Al Paton. Have a great round 22 and happy super coaching.